Well, all right. I wanted to give you an update on something. So, I just recently went on some vacation to southern Utah. While there, I spent some time at the Mountain Meadows Massacre site. There is a memorial site down there. I've spent basically the last 6 months studying the Mountain Meadows Massacre. Absolutely fascinating piece of history. So, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to create several videos in going over this. So today, what I want to talk about is what is the Mountain Meadows Massacre? What happened? Those kinds of things. Where did it happen? And then I'm going to do another video on why it happened and what was going on with it and the circumstances around it. And then we'll do another video on what happened as a result of it. What was the consequences people faced and dealt with? Because while this massacre involved a little over a dozen people perpetrating it, only one person has ever been held accountable as far as charged and convicted for the crime. So we're going to talk about some of the extenuating circumstances and what happened around those things, and hopefully deal with some of the myths and things that are around the Mountain Meadows Massacre. So let's talk about what happened. Okay, the Mountain Meadows Massacre is the absolute worst part of LDS church history. This is a massacre that took place just a little north of St. George. So if you're familiar with the area, if you go to Snow Canyon and then just keep going north along that road for about another 20-ish minutes, you'll go to Mountain Meadows. There's some signs you can see. If you're in Cedar City, which is another southern Utah town, and you go west from Cedar City towards Gunlock, you'll eventually go over by the Mountain Meadows area. So what happened here is that area is a very fertile area. Lots of grasslands, lots of opportunities for cattle to graze. There's a spring down there. So this is part of the Overland Trail. When people would immigrate from the eastern United States into the western areas of what we would call the United States today, back in the 1800s, the West was still just territories. If you remember, there was the Mexican-American War, and when that war was fought, the United States ended up basically claiming as their victory a whole bunch of land that included the Utah Territory, Nevada, parts of California, Arizona, that whole area was taken by the United States during that war. And so that became part of the U.S. It was kind of the unincorporated part of the U.S., basically. But as immigrants came west, especially after 1849, the gold rush, there was a highway that developed, just a common route that people were using. So this route oftentimes would go from Nebraska, Iowa area over towards Salt Lake City, and then split somewhere around Salt Lake City. Once you get on this side of the Rockies, you could go more north to get up to Portland, Washington area, or you go south to head down through what we would call today southern Utah, the I-15 corridor, and then out to what was basically southern California and those areas down that way. So immigrants coming into Utah, into the Utah Territory, into Salt Lake City, and then branching out from there was very common to have happen. So, and this part of southern Utah was one of the last kind of nice, pleasant areas before you get into the desert. You start to descend down into the deserty areas that we think of as St. George today, as well as the Mojave Desert and Las Vegas area, those parts of the area. If you've ever driven I-15 to Disneyland, you know how arid that area gets out there. It's hot, it's dry, so a lot of these immigrants, when they would come over, they would need places to stop, resupply, get some rest, get a bunch of water in containers, let their animals graze, because there's just not a lot. So they just have to brave it out and tough it till they get to Southern California, where there's more fertile soil, more grasslands for their animals to graze on, water supplies, other things that they can now live on. So you just kind of have to tough it out through the desert part. So Mount Meadows was an extremely popular place for this to happen. They would come down just not so much on the where I-15 is today through Utah, a little bit further west. They would come down through the more plains, flat areas, not up against the mountains. And Mountain Meadows was one of the last fertile areas before you headed into the desert. So it was a common place to stop and rest for a few days, get yourself ready for the harshness of the desert. So there's an immigrant train, and there were these trains were coming across the western United States during the let's say the 1850s, for example, that time period. I mean, there were probably a dozen or more at least a year coming over. It was a constant stream of immigrants passing through the area, these wagon trains. So that's they're constant. Okay, they're always constantly coming through. The Mountain Meadows massacre happened in Mountain Meadows because of there was an immigrant wagon train that ran into problems with the local Mormon settlers. There were some disagreements. The easiest way to say it is there was road rage between the Mormon settlers and the immigrants, and the settlers decided to take it upon themselves to stage a cattle raid, an Indian cattle raid against these settlers to get them back. Basically, the Mormon settlers felt slighted, and they like these immigrants were rude and need to be taught a lesson type idea. So they basically convinced Indians to help them to do a raid. The Indians wouldn't do it alone, so they made the Mormon settlers help them. They did a raid on these people. It ended up being a two-part process to get that raid to happen. The initial raid didn't work out well, so they had to come up with a plan B, and plan B was basically just kill the rest of them. So it was a massacre. Over 120 immigrants were in this wagon train, and they were all killed, with the exception of 17 children. 17 children were kept alive. These were young enough children, like under the age of 8, where they would not be able to testify or know enough to be able to be used in a court of law against these men who perpetrated it. And so they were kept alive. They were so that's one of the things we're going to talk about as a ramification of this, is what happened to those 17 children that were kept alive. Why did this all happen? What was precipitating this? What were the challenges and things that precipitated this? And why was only one man held accountable for this? There was probably 13 or 14 men who were involved in this massacre. Pretty much all were Mormon. All the white men were Mormon. They recruited Indians to help them to kill this group off. And so that's what happened. Basically, they were brutally murdered originally under the guise of teaching them a lesson by encouraging the Indians to raid their camp. And then it went bad, and then they had to do something about it. And so rather than let the people go, which they should have done, and face whatever consequences that came because of their poor actions, they decided, we can't leave evidence. We need to kill them. We need to get rid of them. It's going to be way worse if we don't. So this is the lesser of the two evils. And so they concocted a plan to kill the people. So I'm trying not to make this too gruesome or harsh. It is a rough situation when you start to see what was happening. So, well, okay, but let me give you a little bit more detail on this to kind of flesh this out a little bit. So again, they had that raid first. It didn't go so well. Then, and there were several leaders involved in this. Brigham Young was not one of them at all. It was local leaders only, like a local state president and a local militia leader that were the two main leaders that ran this and approved this plan. Isaac Haight was the state president in the area, and William Dame was the military commander for the Southern Utah Zion's camp, basically, the local militia. And they were the two that were the leaders responsible for authorizing and approving this plan. Well, when the first plan was botched, basically, they had to create a second plan. So the first plan was, hey, you know what? Indians It's just a normal habit. It's a normal thing when you're crossing the plains. Part of the hazard of this long trip is sometimes Indians are going to raid your camp and steal your cattle and things. So what we're going to do is we're going to convince the Indians to raid this camp. The Indians said, we'll raid them, but only if you come do it with us. We're not going to do it alone. This is a pretty big camp. And in order to get their plan done, they said, okay, fine, we're going to have some white men dressed as Indians go along with you, sneak around the hills to get down into the valley, and we'll do this raid. Well, as they went in to do that raid, there was a couple of men guarding the cattle. And as they guarded the cattle, they stumbled across, they saw Indians and white men hiding in the bushes and realized, oh my gosh, they're about to attack us. So they tried to hurry and let the rest of the immigrant train know we're under attack. So the Indians and the white men shot the guards to kill them so they couldn't alert everybody else. But of course, now there's the percussion of the gun that alerted everybody else. Somebody just fired a gun, what's going on? And so the element of surprise was lost for the Indians and the settlers. So it turned into a fight. The immigrants, so what they would do is they would circle your wagons around. That's a common thing we hear about. But what we don't hear often about is they would dig a trench to drop the wheels into that would make them a more formidable force. You had to shoot through their wagons and all the stuff in their wagons to get at them. And they usually have this heavy furniture in there and supplies. So things made out of metal, things made of more wood. So you basically create a not so much cover, but concealment. So you are in a more protected position. And this immigrant wagon train actually were carrying, if I remember right, they had Kentucky long rifles. So they could shoot accurately at a distance, and they knew what they were doing. These guys were really good with their guns. And so they were able to keep everybody at bay. They killed a couple of the Indians. So only 4 or 5 immigrants actually died out of the 120 some odd immigrants that were there. 2 or 3 of the Indians died. It was botched. It didn't work out. So the Indians were like, we're out. We're not doing this again. That was a stupid plan. And so they were a little mad about the whole situation. The white men were like, oh, crap. They've seen us. So the problem is these immigrants, if we let them go, they're going to go to California in a hurry. And they're going to tell people the Mormons attacked us. We need to form an army in Southern California to go basically give retribution to the Mormons. So they would form an army and come back and attack the Mormons. And that's not going to work out very good. And we're going to talk about why that's not going to work out very good for the Mormons in the next video, because they were about to be assaulted by the U.S. Army, who was crossing the plains at the same time. So they decided, the Mormon leadership, Isaac Haight and William Dame and John D. Lee was a captain in the military, and he was the Indian communicator to rally the Indians and pull all this together. So he was kind of the man in the field, if you will. They decided, we can't let these immigrants go. We just got to get rid of them all. And so our original plan botched, but the ramifications from it's going to be way worse, possibly. So we just need to get rid of them all. And so they decided plan B is we're going to have John D. Lee get a bunch of men together, and we're going to go down there and kill them all, get rid of them all. Problem is they're really well fortified. So how do you get them out of that? Well, John D. Lee, if I remember right, was the one that came up with the plan. He got 2 wagons, and he got all these men to come with him. And their plan was, John D. Lee was going to go with a white flag into the camp, into the immigrants' circle. And he's going to tell them, hey guys, we hear you've got some problems with the Indians. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to help you out. We've talked to the Indians. They're willing to let bygones be bygones, but they want some of your stuff, some of your property. So here's what we're going to do is we're going to take you guys, lead you back to Cedar City so that you can be with the settlers and be safe. We're going to let the Indians take the evening and kind of take what they want from you, and then we'll escort you guys back out here, help you out, and get you on your way. And some of the people are like, oh, that sounds good. Because they've been out there for like 5 or 6 days in this siege, waiting at any moment for the Indians to reattack, basically. So they're running out of food. They can't sneak out to go get water because the people are getting shot at when they try to sneak out to the spring to get water. So they're running out of food, running out of water. They've got several people who are wounded as well. Several, about 4 or 5 died, but then there's several wounded as well. So it's not a good situation. So for the immigrants, excuse me, you have to realize they're in dire straits. They're having to do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week patrols for the 5, 6 days they were out there. They're running out of supplies. They're struggling. And so they just look at it and go, well, we can sit here and starve to death. We can try to escape and get shot to death. Or we can go back to Cedar City with the Mormons and hope the Indians don't take all of our stuff, and we'll still have something to live off of when we head west, basically. So it's kind of what else do you do? For them, they're like, what else do we do but follow what John D. Lee is saying? It took a while to get everybody convinced that was the plan. Some people are like, no, I feel like this is a trap. This is not going to work. And that was the minority opinion, so they got overridden. So here was the plan that John D. Lee said. We're going to load your wounded into a wagon. We're going to load all of your little children into a wagon. And we need all your guns, by the way. So we're going to disarm all of you so the Indians don't see you with guns. We're going to put all those in the wagon. And then we're going to lead out with these wagons. And then we're going to have the women and children follow the wagon. They're going to walk behind it in a group. And then behind them, we're going to have all of the men, so like 12 years old and up, are going to walk single file, basically, after them. So you kind of see how this is forming up. And then what they did is they had basically a militia person, one person, follow each man. And so that was the plan. So they started out from the wagon where they circled the wagons, started out and headed up towards Cedar City to basically take everybody back. As they did this, somebody at the front of the wagon group, this whole party, their whole job was to yell halt. When they yelled halt, then all of the men, the Mormon men, would shoot the immigrant men, kill them all, wipe them out, and then the Indians were going to come out of the brush and kill all the women and children. And that's how they'd get rid of everybody. And then somebody else, it was John D. Lee, his job was to get into the wagons and kill all the wounded. So all they had was this one wagon of little children that was left. They decided it'd be bad to kill them, so we won't. Kind of a weird logic they had, but that's what they ended up with. So that's what happened. And that's what their plan was, and it was executed quite well, unfortunately, and it didn't take very long, and all the immigrants were killed. And so that's what happened. Was it caused by Mormons? Absolutely. Did the immigrants have any culpability or say in this? Maybe a little. They really don't have much to go on. There's nothing that you could charge them with, other than some of the rumors are that the immigrants were rude and mean to the Mormons. But that's not necessarily against the law to be rude and mean. So there's no charges that could be brought up against the immigrants. Are there charges against the Mormons? Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of charges because of the murders. They killed all these people. So this situation is way more on the local Mormon settlers who did this. Now it was only a little over a dozen men that did this, or were responsible for this. So it wasn't everybody in southern Utah, just this group of men that had come together for this. And each of these men had different levels of culpability. Some of them had no idea what was going on and were more witnesses to it. Some were directly involved in pulling the trigger, and some knew what was going to happen and planned it. So there's a little bit of, you have to take each person individually and say, how culpable were they in this? So we'll talk about some of those situations and things in future video. But it did happen. It was a terrible experience. If I had to blame anybody, it would be the Mormon settlers in southern Utah, this group of men who pulled this off are culpable, and they should be held accountable for it. And it took nearly 22 years before anybody was actually convicted of any crimes related to this massacre. And there's some good reasons why it took that long, and we're going to talk about those as well here in another video. So I just want to get out today, just understand this is a fascinating part of Mormon history. If you are not Mormon and you want to understand this crazy part of Mormon history, this will be some great videos to watch. So next week we'll have another one. If you are Mormon and you want to understand better what happened with this, will be some great videos for you to watch as well. So we'll see you next week as we talk about what precipitated this massacre. What made the conditions so that this could happen? Basically, why did it happen? And what caused this to come about? So we're going to talk about that next week, and so we'll see you then and continue this discussion.